Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Pop Kannon. This is episode 61, and it is a fan's choice episode. We are your hosts. My name is Jordan.
I'm Robert.
Name's Paul.
I'm Joe.
Guys, I said it was a fan's choice episode. That's because if you're not in our Facebook group, the Pop Kannon Collective, you weren't able to vote for a series of films that we would potentially cover, and today's episode is such, as we are covering The Fifth Element as chosen by the Pop Kannon Collective.
Yeah, we had a couple other movies in that poll, but Fifth Element won. It was narrow. It came down to a few votes. Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 different ones. So if you want to have a voice in future episodes, you have to join Pop Kannon Collective.
It's your right as an American citizen. Or anyone, I guess.
So today we are discussing The Fifth Element. As I said before, it's a 1997 film. What was everyone's viewing experience like? What's your memories of the film?
I have very fond memories of this movie. It always seemed to be on any channel if you had cable TV as a kid. So I caught it in like snippets at first, and then when I finally got to sit down and take the whole thing in, it was exactly as weird as I thought it was on first impression. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't really like hold on to from when I was a kid that surprised me now. Like Korben Dallas is a very creepy dude throughout the entire film, which I just did not. It bounced right off of me as a kid. But otherwise, like, everything about this movie besides that is fucking wild. The production design is so intense and deep. The costumes, even like the effects for being clearly like a 1997 effects they're fun to watch, and it exists in this weird point where you can tell all the practical stuff was shot on film and there's like these digital effects being blended in, but it has like those stable shots of like a very film look with longer time before an edit, but with these very animated action sequences. And it's a really fun testament to like a step into a new age with like the new millennium for film. A movie that like today would be trying to make 3 different movies, one standalone sci-fi insane, like almost a Star Wars ripoff until it just goes completely off the rails in a different direction. I do love this movie, so I do think it holds up in spite of its red flags.
Not even flaws, but red flags.
Yeah. Robert, what did you think?
The very first time I saw this movie in its entirety, I absolutely hated it. And then because I'm pretty sure we discussed it at school one time.
Probably. Yeah.
Wait, in a class?
Yeah. No, like the 3 of us, like sitting around in between classes, I believe, discussed it. Everybody couldn't believe that I didn't like it. So then I watched it again very, very recently after that very first time. And I still had like so many questions and was so bewildered. And then like it turned into me trying to talk about it all the time. And then I realized I just really like it. Because I felt like the more I watched it, the more I was like really comfortable with all of the weird things that are thrown at you and happen. And I didn't really realize what necessarily the story was. I feel like it's disorienting because you're all over different locations and places and people and shit. So it's like hard to kind of wrap your head around what that universe is actually showing you. But I don't really have that many issues with it. Aside from what Joe said, that was pretty glaringly obvious when I watched it last night. Which I was like, ooh, that's really, really strange. But no, I love this movie, and I have no problem, like you said, watching it on cable every time it's on, because I'll just put it on. It's beyond a comfort thing for me now, because I like it that much, you know?
Yeah.
But I remember seeing the cover for it in my grandparents' basement, because my grandfather had it on VHS, and just like staring at it like, what the fuck? Because all the characters are on it. you just look at those 4 or 5 characters along each other and like they're in the same fucking place somehow. Like, how do you fucking comprehend that? Especially as a kid, so I had no idea what to expect when I watched it as an adult. But I love it. I think it's great. Paul, what do you think of it? Like overall?
I do remember it very well from when I was a kid. And I remember I liked it then, I think mainly because of, like, from a imagery standpoint. Like, I remember the whole sequence with the opera singer because of the, like, composition of that song, I think. Like, stayed with me. But I had watched it, like, fairly recently, and then I watched it again just before we did this. But, like, I don't think, like, the story is that good. I think it's, like, it's just watered down, I guess. Which isn't, it makes sense, I guess, because they're trying to do, like, these, like, huge concepts, like, there's, like, great evil. Yeah. And so it's, like, it just, I don't really like how that great evil is just kind of like a sphere of...
Just a planet.
Yeah. It's the moon.
Oh, right, yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't know, it feels like it's trying to be too big or something. That's one criticism that I would have of it. And then yeah, I guess Korben Dallas is like kind of a weird dude, but he ends up having like some good moments where like he's kicking ass and stuff, and maybe he's just supposed to be like a archetype. The visuals and the cast, like the acting, are probably the best parts of this movie. Like it kind of feels like Stargate a little bit too, with that like Egyptian sequence in the beginning, where they have those like suits. It looks like Stargate, like straight up. Or at least that's what I thought of. And Stargate came out in '94, 3 years before this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've always liked it. I like it now. I don't think it's like an amazing movie or anything, but it's like really fun, and I think it like has like a lot of like genuinely funny moments. So I guess that leaves Jordan.
As a kid, I never really saw this movie, only in chunks. I'd see it on TV. As far as my viewing experience of this film, I just watched it for the very first time from start to finish. Wow. Literally just finished it maybe an hour ago. Wow. So it's still very fresh in my brain. But obviously, as I was watching it, I was seeing moments of the film that I remember, like the opera. The visuals are very defined and pronounced throughout the entire film. I think the acting was really fun. Absolutely astounding performance from Gary Oldman, in my opinion, who really pulled you in to Zorg as a character, which is a silly name with a sillier like appearance and stuff, but somehow still able to win me over in every scene that he's in. Yeah, overall I thought it was good, but there's a lot of issues. I don't think it's as great as everyone makes it seem. I think it's most people looking at it through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily because my standards are so high or anything. I think for the time it was awesome, probably. Like for a 97 movie, like...
Yeah. You were like, holy shit.
It feels like a very 90s film. So, Korben Dallas is a super weird dude. Very creepy and uncomfortable. But yeah, like Paul said, he did have good moments.
Yeah. Why don't we just get Korben Dallas out of the way?
Yeah, it just seems unnecessary. Like, so I like that the idea of like love is like an overarching theme.
Yeah.
Like I like that again, that's like another big concept, like a great evil, you know what I mean? Like they try to like force into it, and it's like
the opposite. It's the opposite of the great evil is the love,
right?
And that's, she needs all of the elements together to put forward the energy necessary to rebuke the great evil.
yeah.
But I did not believe their love in any way.
Oh no. They go into detail about all of that stuff at the very beginning. And then all this crazy shit happens in Egypt, and you're like, wait, what the fuck is going on? So you kind of forget all of, like, You know what I mean? Like you don't necessarily. You're like, what information other than like the look of everything am I supposed to carry through to the next part of it?
Right.
The Korben Dallas stuff is like, so basically we all agree that he's like a creep because this woman that doesn't speak the language that he speaks falls into the back of his taxi barely wearing anything, and he just falls in love with her. That's creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
And he kind of is like forceful, and then they even acknowledge that at a certain point, which
Right.
I thought was, which I think for 97 is pretty fucking progressive, to have her say that she didn't tell him that he could or whatever. I think that that's really big, and I don't necessarily see throughout the film how she ever falls in love with him, like how it's ever from her end reciprocated to him, because she's got a lot more going on than fucking falling in love with Korben Dallas.
No, I think you put it best. I don't know if you said this when we were recording now or before. But you were like, she has a particularly childish personality, and it is like she's like being reborn. So if anything, that's what makes it weird. Like, it'd be one thing if he was like Han Solo and he was like, it was pushy a little bit, and then like it was obvious that she did want
if there was like
that she was like making a choice as well.
It'd be one thing if she was conscious.
Wait,
It's just like, we got Sleeping Beauty over here.
He does carry her around the film for quite a bit.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
He's on the phone with Finger in the beginning, and he keeps saying that like his ex-wife was like the perfect woman, and he's obsessed with like
right.
So like he doesn't know anything about Lilu, doesn't even know her name, but he heard the priest say she's perfect. And that's what he holds on to. He's like, oh, that's the perfect woman, so I want her.
Yeah.
And then let's also just point out the idea that the perfect form is some skinny white lady is a really problematic thing to keep. Like, they keep harping on that for the first third of the movie, like, she's perfect.
Oh, yeah. No, every single character says it about her, which is really weird.
It's
and
like,
they explain that her
on.
DNA, that humans' DNA is like 2 strands or something.
She's just got a lot of it.
And then she's just somehow got like 400 times as many strands of DNA, and that makes her somehow a perfect or more perfect being. They're more tightly coiled together, I think is the phrase that the guy
They're
used.
talking about her DNA, Joe, not her physical appearence, okay?
Sure, yeah. It doesn't matter that she's like changing clothes every time they say it too.
Because her kind were in those gigantic suits that we see in Egypt at the beginning. Like, she's created from the DNA pulled out of like the severed arm of one of them that died in the accident, because they're like the most ineffectual protectors of all time. They fuck up on Earth in Egypt, and then in space they also fuck up and die. They're like really
I want
bad
to talk
at it.
about that opening for like a hot second.
No,
and the character design choices for those beings. I guess now maybe I don't know about in 1997, but now it was hard for me to submerge myself and get invested in the believability of it and suspend my disbelief.
So wait, are you saying like the design of it?
Yeah, like threw me off. Like, just from the way that they looked, I wasn't sure if they were friendly, if they were supposed to be intimidating, if they were supposed to be like goofy, because they like really moved goofily.
Yeah,
like,
I think that's the
there's
point.
There's a million
though.
other ways they could have played that, in my opinion.
I think that's the point, because it's like a microcosm of the whole film. It's like we're dealing with like this like cartoony big conflict of good versus evil. We're in this like super like period setting of like this pyramid, and then this foreboding force comes down, but then it's this big goofy thing. It's like, I don't know, should I be scared? And even like the tone of the film is set when the priest is trying to poison the doctor and he won't just fucking drink it. It's like, okay, like we're gonna be like a little like serious, but we're gonna have fun too. And I think that's what they were trying to convey, and that was like the fun of it. And even like, it's very funny that like this big foreboding thing can't move fast enough to get out. So, but it's also at the same time like it's already done the math. It's like, okay, you need to take this, you need to do all this stuff. So like, I don't know. For that reason, I loved it. And like I like that those guys aren't present in the rest. Like they come back 300 years later, but then they immediately die.
But that's so to Jordan's point though, when I watched it for the first time and hated it,
Oh yeah,
it was things like that I felt like prevented me from just like accepting the reality of what this universe was, because I was trying to apply like any sort of outside logic to why it would look like that or what all of those things do and mean, because there's a lot of shit happening on that piece.
yeah.
That's like a practical fucking costume that they made, which I love that they did it practical.
Oh yeah.
But obviously you would run into the issue looking like that it would fucking walk goofy.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it does on wherever the fuck it's from. It could fly or whatever. You have no idea. So walking here is like, oh shit, the contingency isn't set for this.
I think that's an interesting point though, that it seems like we all, on like a first reaction whenever we first saw this, like were pretty struck by the weirdness of it, and that like held us back. But then on a second viewing, once you kind of relinquish yourself to it and just go along for the ride, you have a lot more fun. But when you're when you're wrestling with it and trying to like pry something out of it, you can't
enjoy viewing it that way. You can't. Right. It's really difficult to enjoy viewing it that way if you're like, but why? And I don't know. This like, it didn't initially give me the suspension of disbelief the very first time I watched it. Then you get like, if you stay watching the movie and you get to the diva scene, like by the time that happens, so much weird shit has taken place that like when this gigantic blue woman comes out and just sings inhuman fucking like, you're just like, you either throw your hands up at that point or because it's
you just accept it and move on.
Or you just at that point finally accept that like, I'm never gonna understand what's all happening here and why.
It's not even that it's dependent upon the story, but that's what I was saying at the beginning. Like, it took me a while before I was actually submerged in the world. And once I accepted that, it was a good time.
I feel like Korben Dallas is a really good example of whatever the male equivalent is of a Mary Sue. Yeah. He just kind of picks up and can do anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's that trope thing where they're like, "Oh, you're ex-military."
Right.
We got
I've been
one more
retired
job
for 6 months. Well, we got one more job.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think Bruce Willis is the main character of this film.
I don't like Korben Dallas's like gruffness, like especially like in the Ruby Rod scenes, like that's good stuff, and like the action is good. It's just like that creepy side of the character really like pulls the rug out.
It felt forced for sure. It felt forced.
Like
they didn't need to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. All I'm saying is they could have taken any other actor, plugged that in, and it wouldn't have necessarily mattered.
Bruce Willis, what he brought to that role was the seal of approval of like an action movie.
Yeah.
You cast Bruce Willis in 1997 for your action movie because you want fans of Bruce Willis to go see it as an action film. Like, that's why you get it. Like, he's the box office draw for it, and the director and writer of this, Luc Besson, like brought the script to Bruce Willis. He read it, and in 2 hours he was doing the movie. Like, he was just in from the beginning, because especially when you're that type of actor, this is the role that's your bread and butter. The ex-cop, ex-military white savior, whatever the fuck. Like, he's done like a million
character.
Yeah, he's done a very there's not a lot to him, and I think Paul even said it earlier that he's just like an archetype or whatever. Yeah, like he's not. Yeah. There's not a lot. I mean, they add layers to him with the stuff with his mom, which is funny. Constantly getting bad news where that guy, that Japanese boat thing that's like a floating restaurant came to his window, which is part of this dystopian future that I love.
Yeah.
Fuck Grubhub, bring the restaurant to me. But yeah, so I agree that the character of Korben Dallas is general enough that most anybody else could have brought something different to this character, but I think the reason you cast Bruce Willis in 1997 is the action movie credibility, coupled with he's able to make a relationship seem real out of absolutely nothing. Like, you could tell he believes he's in love with her, which is great. And also that third act gigantic action set piece is why you have Bruce Willis in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would have made more sense if Mila Jovovich was like the actual protagonist of the story. Like, clearly it would make more sense, but I still think
she's always falling asleep.
Right. And then maybe his character entered the story at the point that her character did in the movie. Then it would, maybe that would have worked better. Like, and then at least you would maybe believe that she could love him. I don't know. Like, you could at least
get
like
her perspective.
Even if they had let her reach a point of like revival of her mental state, like shouldn't say a full sentence until like by the end, right?
Yeah.
There is that like good moment when they're like getting on the ship and he's just like, this is gonna be pretty dangerous, and she's like, I'll protect you.
Yeah.
That's when it's clear, like, okay, like she does have some understanding and like she knows what she's doing. She's just like doesn't really have the time or like patience to try to explain it to anybody because she doesn't have the tools to at the moment. I would have liked to see her more of a protagonist than just like another like thing that's happening on the sideline.
Exactly. And that, like, there are good ways to have two protagonists. Like, The Nightmare Before Christmas, like Sally and fucking Jack. Like, that's a good way to have two protagonists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this, like, is it's weird. It doesn't really fit.
Overall, though, I think the tone of the movie was really interesting. I liked it because it was funny and it didn't take itself too seriously, which allows you as the viewer to not take it so seriously and not really concern yourself with those questions because the movie isn't.
As ridiculous as everything was, it had its own kind of grounding. Like, the dystopian plot elements that were just like threaded into their everyday lives. Like, everybody's apartment has those yellow dots on the wall, and that's because when the cops come, you have to put your hands on the wall. And then again, like, you see that in different spots around, like in like the ticket booth and everything.
It's there's two circles on the ticket booth where it's like, we've had to arrest so many people here. We just have the place where you put your hands.
The fact that there's fucking mountains of trash everywhere. The fact that it's been 300 years, but radio is still like going strong. Even like, I love the opera performance is so nuts because it starts as this like classical, like this is what like rich people do. They go to the opera, but then it devolves into this like poppy
techno dance,
crazy techno thing, and it's like, that's awesome.
That scene was incredibly 90s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The production design for this was done by two like super prolific French cartoon artists that are not the guy that Paul likes to talk about.
I was thinking about just waiting till the end, but should I just get that out of the way?
Yeah.
So all right. So some people know about this, but Alejandro Jodorowsky was supposed to do the Dune movie, right? But his Dune movie was gonna be like 10 hours long or something like that. It's probably hyperbole, but nobody wanted to do it. What he did was he made a graphic novel instead, where all the ideas that he was going to use in his Dune movie, which had nothing to do with the book, he made into a graphic novel called The Inkle. And his artist, Jean Giraud, took all of the ideas that he used in that book for this movie. And the editors of the book sued Luc Besson for stealing the ideas, but they lost.
Wow.
Because it's hard to prove who came up with IP first.
That book, if you ever get a chance to read it, is incredible. Like, when I first read it, my knee-jerk instinct was to be like, fuck The Fifth Element. because like I was saying before with like the concepts that this movie tries to tackle, that book does, but very, very well.
Who was the guy that you said stole it from him?
Jean Giraud. He didn't. No, so he just took his own ideas that he used for the book of The Inkle and used the same like concepts for this movie.
And so I watched the special features on the Blu-ray of The Fifth Element last night, and that guy, and then another French comic book artist whose name is also Jean, those two together worked for a year on the production design for this.
Right.
Where Luc Besson would be like, hey, remember that thing that you drew? Something like, he literally was like, and he was saying it in the documentary or whatever. He's like, remember the thing that you drew for that? Or not for like any specific thing, but remember that thing, like the taxi that you drew. I like that. Give me something like that. So then he just drew another similar looking taxi, and then they put it into the production of it. So like they spent a year drawing all these fucking concepts for this movie, and then when they had all of that work, they brought it to when they were building the sets and shit like that. So that's where all of that stuff came from, was stealing it from the French in some other way. Which was kind of like, I knew that when I was watching that, I was like, there's information that Paul has here that's gonna put these two things together for me.
I know we talked a little bit about the production design and the practicality of the costumes before. We're all big fans of practical costuming and practical sets, and I thought all of that stuff in this movie was incredible. The amount of work that must have gone into every little detail must have been astounding.
And the designer complained because there's like no budget for costuming ever in movies, and that's why he's never worked on another movie after this. He said is because they don't pay any attention to the fashion budget, and he can't do this again, is what he basically said. Which I was like, dude, it held up.
Yeah.
Because it's so weird and it's in so many different places. And Luc Besson had said that he wanted it to be light and funny and weird, like the design of everything, because so many futuristic sci-fi things are dark and gray and raining all the time. So he wanted this to be like the opposite of that. Like when it's actually daytime outside is like when this fucking movie happens. It's not your typical cyberpunk future that is used in like Altered Carbon and all of those other types of things, which I think it works as an antithesis to all of that. I feel like, because of all the colors and all of the crazy shit, because they still feel like they're in the same place, just like night and day.
Again, like I said, how you need to suspend your disbelief. Once you do that, you're seeing this big blue lady walk in, this towering creature
headdress.
Like, I thought that scene was very interesting, and it was shot so well, because you like didn't know what you were looking at, and stuff like that's so strange, and it pulled me in.
When the great evil gets mad at, like, it's like minions or like is targeting you, just that, like, the ichor of, like, it's probably just like motor oil that they're dripping above the camera, like that, like, always stuck with me, like, as a kid. That was like terrifying, because it's like, that's not blood, what the fuck is that? And it's just like dripping down his face. Ugh.
What is that viscous substance?
And it's such like a simple effect.
Yeah, and it's like scary as fuck, because you're like, how is it making that happen to you?
When that guy shows up to his door to kill him, and he's just wearing a thing on his head that looks like the wall behind him. That was, I loved that. I loved the thing. Kind of reminded me of like the shit in the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones' The Last Crusade.
Yeah.
So it's like something like that, like, but like you see what it is so quickly that it, like, it just doesn't even matter.
Like, he didn't do it long enough to fool anyone.
To be effective,
No. But I think that was that character was like that.
Right.
He was a fucking junkie or whatever the fuck was wrong with him.
And like the weapon he was holding, like, straight up looked like a toy, basically.
Yeah.
And like, I couldn't tell, had Korben confiscated that many guns from him, or is that just where he keeps his guns?
I think that's where he keeps his guns.
I think that's where he's confiscated everyone else's guns, because I was led to believe that he like lives in a really shitty neighborhood, and like there's just a bunch of tweakers trying to rob him all the time.
So he's constantly just disarming them and keeping their guns.
Yeah,
because it was kind of like they weren't in there in a way that somebody who collected that stuff would keep it. So it definitely looked like more of a receptacle than like a display situation.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was able to just like put it back into it, and there's just like another one, you know.
But speaking of his apartment, I thought the way that it was all laid out was so cool.
Isn't that fucking awesome?
Having things rise and things go away, and the fridge is below the shower. It's so cool.
I can't believe that places haven't tried to make that work practically. Because like a lot of times sci-fi becomes just actual sci. So
there are those like kind of micro apartments in like Japan and stuff, and like they're becoming like more popular in different places, but
it's like similar to that where they your like refrigerator disappears to reveal your
I don't know
shower.
if it's that extreme, but
I think it just like conceptually like that would save so much space if you could do all those things in one area.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, that's dystopia.
Yeah, let's dystopia. Hashtag let's dystopia. Practicality wise, one group of the bad guys has those goofy bulldog masks on.
Yeah.
And I don't hate it because the design is so interesting and you don't
get
really
used
know
to it
how...
after a while.
Yeah, you're just like, wow, they're fucking ugly, and then you're just like, some people are just fucking ugly, I guess. It's kind of accepted.
But they can shapeshift. Which...
What did you guys think about Mila Jovovich?
I think she did a fucking incredible job in this. She was super believable in having that like childlike atmosphere to her where she was trying to learn how to understand everything very quickly. I think she did a really good job of that. The divine language that she speaks in the movie is a language that her and the director worked on. Like they created an entire thing and they were able to converse by the end of production entirely in that language. Because there's only like, I think 400 words in it, I think is what I read.
Still, that's impressive though.
But she already can speak 4 different languages. So it was easy for her to pick up one that doesn't have a lot to it.
Right.
So they were like writing letters and shit back and forth in it. Just to try to get a deeper understanding of it. And she added more to it after the fact, too. So that, in and of itself. And then she did all of the action shit, all while wearing fucking absolutely nothing at the beginning of the movie. And not really that much later. Which totally reeks of 90s, because why have a woman in your film unless she's the sexy eye candy?
Yeah. I think she did a good job with what she was given. As we already said, like, I wish that she had more to do. If, like, Bruce Willis is, like, the quintessential action hero in the 90s, Mila Jovovich is she had the market of sci-fi woman cornered. But in spite of that, like, she definitely put a lot of work into it. Like, her performance was really amazing, I felt like. Yeah, and like any of like the issues that I have with that character don't really stem from her. So
right. It's all of the other stuff, and I think maybe, and definitely looking back at that character through present day sensibility as opposed to like when that came out, because she was just awesome when it came out, and now it's like awesome with a heaping side of problematic.
Especially like all the like little things, like they, for some reason the priest just had like the makeup robot, and it's like, now you have eyeliner on. And then like, oh, I forgot about the auto cycle, so now you're soaking wet in your white fucking crop top sweater.
You could say that that's part of the like humor.
Yeah,
because it's
the
like
uncomfortableness
self-aware. It's self-aware. Like, I don't know, maybe, I guess,
in a way.
And that was funny too, because the joke was like they would turn around.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah.
Right.
The running joke was like, we're not supposed to look at her. Yeah.
Right.
They acknowledge it, which is in 97 is like unheard of, I feel like. Because I don't even think, I think the Spice Girls might have hit after this. So it's like, you didn't even get that like wave of girl power yet. So the fact that they were willing to cover her up in the background was nice.
Well, even going off like the progressive nature, like Ruby Rhod as a character is fucking amazing. For like 97 to have like this androgynous character that like everybody just thinks is like the sexiest thing on earth, and like it's not like foreign to the characters in the film. Like I think like the character's played for laughs to us, the audience, but like to everybody else, like he's just a celebrity. And like that's like
Yeah.
nothing about his demeanor is like weird except for like to Korben, who is just like not about that spotlight.
He's the straight man to the
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Chris Tucker, man, like just owned that entire performance and role, and it was based off of both Prince and Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I can see
And
that.
they were eyeing Prince to actually do the acting in it, but
Oh, wow.
he's not capable of that. So they had to find somebody that could do. And from watching Rush Hour, and Chris Tucker can do Michael Jackson and all of that shit. So it's just like the perfect, like somehow the right time, the right place, and Chris Tucker was there to be Ruby Rod, which is just like fantastic. But he's funny as hell. He's giving like live commentary, which is an idea that's kind of ahead of its time as like the thing goes down, because that could just as easily be a Periscope or an Instagram Live now. So you could see that character being a celebrity in almost any time, but especially now.
Yeah. I said to my roommates, it was like watching like Billy Eichner do Billy on the Street, but it was in like Kabul last week.
That's an incredible comparison.
Man, for $1, how do we get out of here?
But like I love the line after he signs off and he just goes, "That was the best show of my life," after like going through like all that trauma.
You like, and at a certain point, I don't even think you necessarily realize that he's still broadcasting.
Yeah.
So when he signs off and then he goes, "That was the best episode of my life," you're like, holy shit, he just did all of that for the likes and the subscribes. That's fucking crazy.
I'm in the front row. Someone come help me.
And I love how, oh my God, when he's holding the gun and as soon as he says Ruby and he shoots.
No, he was so funny. Like, when he's looking through the hole during the gigantic action sequence, and he's like giving him like, "There's 7 of them, man. You got to get me down." He just hold on, and he just shoots the fucking floor out from underneath him. And like his face when that's happening is just so funny.
I really like when he signs all of those little girls.
Just paint.
Just with a paintbrush. That was cool.
That character had served its purpose. Like, did not need to be there at the climax, but like he's just like so good, especially like against everybody else there. That like they were like, yeah, you can go into the pyramid or whatever. The temple.
Because he really shouldn't be there, but I guess because he's been following Korben, he just kind of winds up there.
Yeah, and then once everything's over, it's like, all right, I'm done.
All right, bye. He fucking just leaves.
So his character is actually something that was in that book.
Really?
And I think it's there because one of the themes of the book is that everything is constantly being broadcasted.
Okay.
Like, I can see the movie maybe not even having that, like, although it's hard to say that because like his performance is so incredible, but like as a story plot or like a
as like another line, yeah. It's kind of weird because he doesn't even really show up, and we see him for like way deep into the film, so it's just like another thing that's added to the end that you're like, what the fuck?
But it makes the movie so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his whole crew and all of those people that are like dressed like him or similarly
like the guy who's like his hair is shaved but then like half of it is down to the skin.
Yeah. It's so fucking weird, and just like, of course he would have like, he's just like a regular YouTuber now. He has like that colossal group of his friends that he pays money to that follow him around and tell him everything's awesome. Like Pop Kannon Collective, join the group.
On other performances, I think Gary Oldman, like Jordan said in his initial reaction, like really brought a ton to this role. I like had a gag in my head that as a kid, that I never recognized Gary Oldman because he fully like transforms for a role. Like between like the 3 that come to mind are like this, Commissioner Gordon, and like the uncle from Harry Potter. And it's just like those 3 characters are like as different as can be, and like like it's so hard unless you know to like process that they're the same actor.
Dude, he was fucking Dracula.
Yeah. And like the biggest thing in this for me is when you first like meet him and he's doing the car salesman routine. For me to imagine a British actor doing that very like country American car salesman routine for a gun. It was just so wild, and he's so good. And he doesn't even interact with the main cast through the whole movie. He's just there fucking shit up.
There's even the part where they get onto the elevator and he gets off.
Yeah.
Like they literally just pass each other. That could have all been body doubles of everybody else too. He might not have ever been on set with them.
So funny.
Gary Oldman acted in this movie for free because Luc Besson partially financed Gary Oldman's film that came out. I guess it's one that he did or he produced or whatever. So Luc Besson helped finance it. So then Gary Oldman, as he put it in the quote, was singing for his lunch in this movie.
Oh my god!
And he said that he can't watch this. He hates this performance because it's so fucking weird. Yeah. And he said at certain points he was trying to channel the weirdness or the whimsy or however you'd want to describe it of Bugs Bunny.
Oh my god.
So if you watch it back now and there's certain ways that he delivers shit, there's definitely a Bugs Bunny-esque quality to it.
Oh yeah.
Which is so fucking weird, which makes it even better because it's just like all of these collective pieces of pop culture coming together to create the influences of what this was built on, and that's why the future of this is like weird as fuck, but also doesn't seem like it could be that far fucking off from what actually happens. Like the spaceship cruise ship is gonna fucking be a thing. There's no way that that's not gonna be a thing.
That speaks a ton to his professionalism, though, that like he didn't want to be there, but like he still like worked for it. I love
it. Yeah, and he did really well too.
Yeah.
For me, the most memorable thing is like when you see him turn around for the first time and you just try to drink in what's happening. Because he's the big piece of plastic on his head and the like neck scallop and all the fucking it's weird as fuck. It's so
I'm pretty sure
weird.
He had a peg leg because every time he like stepped you'd hear that clink clink. But I thought it was weird because they never focused on it.
No, never mentioned it.
Yeah.
I think Ian Holm was really cool in this movie too.
Oh yeah.
Like kind of not really a character that he generally plays, I feel like.
Is that the priest?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. That's what I figured.
Yeah, Mr. Hobbit, the Hobbit man. He had like some funny moments.
Yeah,
he did. They gave him some decent lines and some humor, which was just like interesting to. Yeah. And like when he's explaining to President Tiny Lister that like what's actually happening and like nobody's listening to him as the thing is like doing exactly what he said would happen.
I like the through line that he comes from a long line of incapable priests who just like are ineffectual to the mission they're meant to serve.
Well, I think because this film was voted by the collective, we should all talk about our favorite scenes, right?
That's
Maybe
fair.
We could make that a discussion post within the group.
That's a great idea, Jordan.
So if you're a member of the Pop Kannon Collective, let us know what your favorite scene was. But as far as us, personally, my favorite scene is the car chase in the taxi cab.
Yeah.
It's memorable to me because that's something that I continually thought about as a kid. That's something when I would think The Fifth Element that immediately comes to mind. And maybe that'll change over time as I continually watch this movie, because I'll definitely watch it again over and over again. Just have a good time with it. It's a good movie just to throw on, turn your brain off, watch John McClane shoot a bunch of stuff.
Oops, I mean
blow some
Korben
stuff
Dallas.
up. But yeah, Mila Jovovich falls through.
Yeah.
And Bruce Willis, reluctantly, for better or worse, uses the last point on his license to storm away from this ineffective police force.
The commentary there is like thick as fucking butter, man.
What about you guys? Favorite scenes? Paul?
So I think I think my favorite scene would be the opera thing, but I feel like I've maybe talked about that too much, so I'm going to give a special shout out to the scene where they're trying to activate the stones. It's like really, it just kind of has like this fun, like urgency.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a really fun scene, and like how they had to like kind of like figure that out.
Yeah.
Joe.
Basically the whole sequence from when he's eating the food at his window, like one, it's like the fun surprise that like he gets his mail and you realize you're in his house and the restaurant is at his window, but then all the way up until when they leave, because like it's every party in the film converging on this one space, and like a lot of coinciding storytelling that like they did really well at like other parts in this movie, but here like it all like really came to a head before like easing off until the climax. But he finds out he won from his mom, and then the tickets show up, and then the military shows up, and then the priest shows up, and he's like dancing around all these different people, and then the cops come to get them out of there. Oh, when he redirects to his neighbor. Like, so much stuff just like playing out so fluidly in that scene, and him hiding everybody in different parts of his little apartment.
And somehow it works.
Yeah, it just like, it really is like all of the fun of this movie bottled up into one sequence that I thought was perfect. So Yezi, what did you think?
So I like all of the scenes that you guys said. It's got to be a toss up because the action set piece of this movie is like incredibly done, and there's a lot of thought behind the movements and stuff, because Korben goes behind that bar and then he moves to the one side of it, and that the side that he was in gets blown up, but he survives that. Like that's a choice. That's not something that just kind of they put together. Like I feel like that was very deliberate in like he's here and then he's here and that gets shot. I guess like honorable mention would be the scene that Joe, you mentioned earlier, where Gary Oldman's a used car salesman with those guns to the Mangalores, man. It's just like, and especially the one that like the bullets all go to the same place as the last one, which is just like a crazy fucking idea.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that to come back around, but it never did.
Yeah. It seems
because you can't shoot anybody with that without just fucking decimating them.
It seems like it would have been really beneficial at like later points in the movie too, so it really should have come back at some point. But when he reveals that the button is like a self-destruct or whatever, and that they were too stupid to ask about it, it's just like, you're immediately just like, where is this gonna go now? You know? And then that's like those characters' driving force is like because he did that. So that's why that they're involved in the rest of the film, is because he did that to them. So that's also like a pretty big moment for the movie, and I think it's funny. But then another shout out to everything that Chris Tucker's in, because he steals it. He steals it. Once he arrives, you're just like, where is he now?
I'm pretty sure he was just my favorite character throughout.
I would want to give an honorable mention as well to not necessarily a scene, but like a bit or a tool that they broke out a couple times of two different groups of characters having the same conversation. So like when he opens the box and like he doesn't say right away that it's empty, or he says it's empty, and then they cut to Lilu laughing. And, like, the priest asks, what do you mean you hid them? And then, like, they keep cutting back and forth. Yeah. I love that, and they did it so well. And even, like, different, like, coinciding scenes and, like, the storytelling elements of, like, when he tells Ruby Rod to count to 10, and he stops at 9, and then Korben Dallas says 10, and then they cut to the bomb, and it's at 10 minutes.
The parallels in it are so good, and they're so well executed, I feel like.
And that's a testament to the editing.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the editing overall for this movie was really, really well done.
Yeah.
Scene to scene, it was a little rough for me at the beginning, but overall, the linear editing throughout was great.
Yeah. And, like, the comedic timing of, like, when Ian Holm like sees the bomb and he does the itza. it's already been going for like 20 minutes, and when Ruby Rod says no, because this place, all these places have bomb detectors and we would have heard something, and then it goes off.
The fucking bomb detector goes off.
But yeah, so let us know what you guys think of The Fifth Element overall. Have you ever seen it before? What's your favorite scene? Who's your favorite character? Memorable moments? Do you think that Korben Dallas is a creep? Let us know. You could find us in the Pop Kannon Facebook group, the Pop Kannon Collective, or you could follow us on social media at Pop Kannon. Don't forget the K.
Like Korben. The K in Pop Kannon is the K from Korben Dallas.
Yeah,
Fun fact.
the much known spelled name Korben Dallas.
But you could also follow us individually if you so choose. I, Robert, can be found on Instagram and Twitter at Yesball.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JL24FPS.
Paul is in that square, and that's where you'll find him. I'm Joe, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Joe for Broke.
So, for Pop Kannon, this has been episode 61, The Fifth Element. Thank you, and we will see you on the very next episode.